Welcome to another mentoring moment with Dr. Mo. I'm Dr. Mo, and in this mentoring moment, we will elevate and enhance your tapping practice by taking a deep dive into testing methods. As a practitioner, your ultimate goal is for your clients to reach emotional freedom, in whatever way that looks like for them. But how will you know the progress that has been achieved in your sessions, and more importantly, the work that remains to be tapped on, if you don't do some gentle testing along the way? So, testing methods are a way of assuming the role of a skeptic. Testing the work with the following methods allows you to approach your client sessions with some gentle, loving skepticism in regards to your client's progress. And you will find that in using these testing methods, there is a great potential for them to be very fun, creative, and even interactive. So I have created this pyramid graphic to help you visualize the hierarchy that exists within this testing method framework. In clinical EFT, there are 4 different types of testing methods: pointed questions, vivid imagination, reenactment, and actual situation. And I've organized this into a pyramid graphic because a huge part of EFT is exposure to stressful stimuli. So you can think of these testing methods as being categorized in this pyramid as going from the least exposure to the greatest exposure. Okay, so we're going to start with the lowest exposure testing method, which is pointed questions. And using pointed questions is quite easy, and you may actually already be doing this in your practice without even thinking about it. So this testing method, it just literally entails you asking some curious, specific questions about what your client is experiencing after doing some tapping. So the most basic question that you ask in your client session is, what's your SUD level now? What's your subjective unit of distress now after we've done some tapping? And that is a pointed question. But if you kind of want to elevate your practice a bit more and get some more variety to the questions that you ask that fall under pointed questions, you can ask your clients things like, well, how do you know that this is actually a 0? Or conversely, what prevents this from being a 0? So say your client is stuck at a 3 SUD level, it won't go down. You can ask them, well, what do you think is preventing that from completely collapsing down into a 0? Okay. You can also ask, well, how do you know that this issue for you is really resolved? How do you know that it's gone? What has changed for you? What is possible now for you that wasn't possible before? Okay, so these are all questions that are just very curious in nature, but they help you to get specific and to see the progress that your client has achieved, and moreover the work that still needs to be done, if any. Okay. So next on the pyramid is vivid imagination. It's one step above in terms of exposure to the stressful stimuli as pointed questions. So this testing method entails having your client vividly imagine a future or past scenario. So let's say, for instance, you've been working with a client who has a lot of anxiety when they go to the supermarket during peak, rush hours, like 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. They have a lot of anxiety when they go. And so say you've been working on a past experience, a recent event that happened where they had a negative experience during peak hours at the market. And you've tapped it down, you feel like, you've collapsed all the aspects, and your client is reporting SUD levels of 0 across the board. So now you can have your client vividly imagine that past event and instruct them, make everything bigger and brighter and louder and exaggerate everything in that memory and see what comes up for you. Because what this is getting at is you're increasing the exposure by having them vividly imagine things. And in that way, you can potentially unearth some aspects that you hadn't tapped on before. Or you can see that some aspects that were 0 were not actually 0. Okay, so in addition to this, you can have your client, instead of imagining a past event, you can have your client imagine a future event. Like, when is the next likely time that you would go to the supermarket? Vividly imagine that experience and see what comes up for you. Okay, so this is vivid imagination. And next up on the testing method scale or pyramid is reenactment. So reenactment is a testing method, excuse me, that is based on basically recreating a past event. So as you can see, we are working our way up this pyramid. We are turning up the dial on the amount of exposure that we are testing our clients with. So reenacting something offers more exposure to the stressful stimuli than the other methods we have discussed, and could therefore uncover more aspects if there are any left. So you can think of reenactment as kind of like a theater production. You're setting the stage, you're playing the roles, and you're acting out what happened in the past to see how your client reacts to it in the present moment. So you can think of this reenactment as kind of like role play, where you as a practitioner act as the stressor or the stressful stimulus and play the role or recreate the past scenario to test your client. So, for instance, if your client was upset about how their 5th grade teacher told them to stop talking and be quiet, and you've been tapping on that specific event, that memory of when their teacher told them that, and you feel like you've collapsed all of the aspects, everything seems to be coming up with suds of 0, you can assume the role of that 5th grade teacher, and you can, say that to your client, like, stop talking, be quiet. Right? Really kind of embody how that 5th grade teacher said that to them. And so that is pretty high exposure because it's getting close to kind of the actual situation. And from this kind of role play, you can see how your client responds or reacts to that, and maybe you need to do more tapping or it's all clear. Okay? You can also use this kind of a reenactment or role play thing for future scenarios. So if your client is anticipating something happening, you can kind of role play that, and it definitely falls into this realm of reenactment. Okay. So, and finally, the last testing method is actual situation. This represents the highest amount of exposure that there is, and it will indicate to you whether or not a client has really achieved neutrality or desensitization for a particular topic or a particular experience that you've been tapping on. So, actual situation entails a client that to face their issue or anything related to their issue in real life, in real time. So actual situation testing works really well for phobias or fears or unwanted habits. And actual situation testing can be a planned experience outside the confines of a private one-on-one session, such as if you were testing to see if a client's fear of dogs has been neutralized, you would go with them to a dog park. Okay, Gary Craig did a lot of this actual situation testing in his work with clients who presented with, fear of heights or fear of water, or there is even a video of Gary Craig working with a veteran who could not go into an establishment and sit with his back to an open space. He had to have his back to a wall so he could see the whole room in front of him. It was, kind of a safety protective mechanism because of what he had experienced. And so Gary Craig used that actual situation of going into a diner and sitting at a table, in dead center in the middle, where the client's back was not toward a wall. It was to empty space. And that classifies as actual situation. Okay. So this type of testing method can also be used within a session, not just outside of a session. If the situation that you and your client are working on can occur within the confines of a session, if that makes sense. So this can be like opening a letter, opening an email, looking at a picture, watching a video. So anything that can happen in real time, in real life, can classify as actual situation. So as you can tell from these examples, actual situation requires you as a practitioner to somehow be with your client, either virtually, in person, or over the phone as your client experiences that actual situation. And that way you can tap them down and help them process as they experience that situation in real life. Okay, so I do hope that this has provided some clarity to you about testing methods. Thank you for tuning into this mentoring moment with Dr. Mo. I'm Dr. Mo, and we will talk and tap soon. Bye.